Hi, everyone, and welcome to our monthly session. This is so exciting, and thanks for being here. And I have a few things to say before we start. Um, we start with the session. Oh, yeah. Thanks so much for, whoopsie, hold on. There's a lot of like noise right now, but thanks so much for uh, responding to the feedback. I really appreciate it. I'm gonna go over it. Um, so I'm gonna keep things the same in the sense that um, the timing, pretty much everyone was okay about the length of the sessions and the time. It didn't work for a few people. So as I mentioned in an email, I'm trying to gather maybe like three more people, subscribers, so we can do it bi-weekly. One of the things that I want to mention is that I've always been very aware of how important privacy is for people, and I never pushed anyone to um, show their faces or share anything. If you notice with my emails, I write a huge chunk uh, paragraph that says you don't have to be painting, you don't have to show your face, you don't have to share. um, I am going to maintain that, but I also wanted to say that some of the things that people valued the most about these sessions is the sense of community that they bring, and specifically how much they loved when everyone towards the end, when I stopped the recording, was sharing their artwork or what they were working on, and I was giving critique. I want to communicate and let you know that people um, really appreciate when you guys share your progress or your stage. And when I just provide some feedback, it's not just a one-on-one. Some people who stay after the session, they actually appreciate that feedback and they get a lot from it. So my message would be, we'll continue with this so far. The same way. I'm gonna do the 90 minutes. I was thinking of maybe at the beginning, just the first few minutes, open all the microphones and then non-recording the session and have a little bit of an introduction, the same way that we do with the sessions, but maybe we'll leave it for September. But I'm gonna encourage you to share your work if you're painting towards the end, so we can have more of a conversation, because the fact that we hold space for each other, the fact that this is a way of creating accountability for practicing, it's really important for people, in addition to the sense of community that it brings when we actually share the work. And it didn't occur to me that that was that important, because I felt that everyone is connecting from the privacy of their homes. And I completely respect that. But I understand that this is also the reason why people love our in-person sessions as well. It's the fact that um, people love to see other people's work grow and develop, and also the feedback that I give during the sessions. So it makes sense. Another thing that I want to mention is that someone mentioned that they wish they had like an option on Zoom where they could just raise their hand and say something instead of typing it. And there actually is an option. So what I'm going to do differently this time, and again, for those who just joined, I'm just being thankful for the responses that we've gotten regarding your feedback, completely anonymous. We don't know where they came from or who wrote them. But one of them was, can I raise the hand? Can I raise my hand? So there's literally a feature on there's a feature that I think it's on your end, where you can actually raise your hand, literally, I mean, not literally, but figuratively, and it would let me know that you have a question, and then I will unmute you. So if during the session you want to ask something and you don't want to use the chat, you can actually I have no idea where the option is, and I didn't have time to research on it. But I know that there's a an option on reactions, and I don't know where it is on my end. But there's an option where you can actually raise your hand and then I will unmute you. So if during the entire session you feel like instead of like posting an image on the chat or asking a question on the chat, you want to actually uh, engage with me with your voice, let's do it. I think it's important to facilitate, and that's something that I appreciate from the feedback that we got. Also, you guys are super nice. Some of the messages were really encouraging, and as I mentioned before, these have become the most important sessions each month, and we're trying to make them more frequent if we get more people. So I'm just gonna go ahead and um, here. Oops, let me see if I can remove this. We started this yesterday. Okay, here we go. Yes. So also a new thing that we added is I know that if you live outside of the US, you don't have that feature, and I'm working on it. And the app is promising that there's going to be an update that's going to allow people to join from other countries. But I created a private room just for us in Geneva where we can actually share things in between sessions. And I will make it a priority to offer this group um, um, more value by introducing open calls and events and things like that to you before anyone else. So we're painting hibiscus. I put the whole entire story in a form of an email that I sent yesterday. This is actually a photo that I took. I think Amanda posted on the main chat on Geneva that she did a painting of hibiscus a few years ago that she sold. And I responded that this is my neighbors. It's across the street. It's just a few blocks down the street where Kian and I live and lived there for 25 years. Just this week, I realized that they have a hibiscus plant. And in 25 years, I have never seen that plant. So this is the power of like putting our attention on a subject or something. Um, and all of a sudden, it just shows up everywhere. Yesterday, we painted at the Everly. We met a couple of French families that were super nice that were staying here. And one of them who we connected, they live in Versailles, in the actual city of Versailles, next to the palace. And she was wearing a t-shirt. They just came from Maui, and the t-shirt had a hibiscus plant. And I started sort of like uh, being very excited and pointing. She freaked out because I was pointing. She's, I felt she thought I was pointing at her boob because I was just completely frozen and still. And then I was saying, oh my gosh. And I was pointing literally at her boob. And everyone stopped talking. We had a really nice group yesterday. And then I was able to verbalize the word hibiscus. It's a hibiscus flower. So everyone started laughing, and also they felt relieved that I didn't just point it at a body part. But anyhow, my point is that all of a sudden, when you put your attention on something, it appears in your life. And I find this such a beautiful game, and it's so interesting, this collective placement of attention on a subject. It almost feels like the universe brings it to you. So I decided to take a photo, but in the email that I sent last night or yesterday, there's also a link to images that some people have chosen. As I usually say, you don't have to do the subject at all. You can work in anything that you'd like or not work at all or on anything. You can sketch or use any medium you would like. But yesterday, it gave me time to do the sketch, and I have a few things to talk about regarding sketching. First of all, I love moving from the gray palette to more colorful, even though I'm going to use my ridiculously reduced palette. That's insane. So I'm gonna continue using that because I think it's gonna create a really interesting mood for the painting. One of the things that I said yesterday, don't think for a second that just because we're doing okay, so Dina, let us know if you I'm just gonna open this in a second and uh it is on the okay, it's on your screen then. So I because I don't have it in my screen. So Dina just posted a screenshot, and I really appreciate it, of how to raise your hand. And yes, and I think I need to do something, but I will be able to get notified when when someone raises their hand, right? Yes, I will be. All right, thank you, Dina. I'm gonna study these instructions tonight because I know that everyone was very much happy about Zoom, but there are so many options and features that it's so overwhelming. So, and it changes all the time, and then they keep adding stuff. So, I really appreciate that. But anyhow, so I was just saying, don't think for a second that this is easier than a portrait, and I will clearly and loudly state that this will be a much harder. Um, yes. All right, let me see. The host needs to disable non-verbal feedback in order for the participants to see the option to raise hand. Uh, I don't know what that means. Okay. Um, I don't think I have anything. Yeah, I don't think I have anything enabled for non-verbal feedback. Anyhow, so I'll just figure out, but yes, Dina, I appreciate it. And you can let me know if I need to do something. Oh, Jen couldn't join us today, by the way. She was really bummed because she went to New York last week, actually, and she went to see a bunch of shows, and she's already talked about a few of them, and she has great feedback as well. So she'll be able to join us next month. I brought some books. I also noticed that some of you love references of art shows, artists that I love, paintings that I've seen, and I will go through that before the session is over. And specifically, I'm going to bring up one manual and one catalog. And actually, I'm going to bring it up in just a couple of minutes. But I was just mentioning that you can uh, mm, okay, so maybe. So what I'm gonna do is actually, I'm just gonna do that. I'm gonna make sure, yeah, so anyone is able to unmute themselves. Maybe perhaps that's what it meant. So that's what I disabled. But anyhow, so the hibiscus flower or any flower is as or if not more difficult than a portrait. So don't think for a second that just because we have 5 petals and one color, it's just going to be much easier than doing a portrait. In my opinion, it is as hard because one of the things that I want to accomplish with this exercise, and I started last night, and please take your time to sketch if while I talk, if you're doing this, is the fact that I want this to be an exceptional painting. I want this to be um, something really amazing and beyond what we associate with a painting of hibiscus. One of the things that I've noticed is that the hibiscus flower hasn't been traditionally and historically used as a subject matter. It's very easy to find examples of flowers throughout art history, specifically the last, I would say, 3 centuries. But you'd be surprised how hard it is to find examples, except in Japanese um, art history. There's much more tradition in Japan centuries ago of people depicting and painting hibiscus flowers. But when it comes to European and American uh, art history, it's not a common subject. So the reason why I'm saying this is because when you put hibiscus flower or hibiscus paintings, you're going to get a bucket load of paintings that, in my opinion, they look fine. There's nothing wrong with them, but they're very commercial. They're just really typical traditional flower paintings. And I know that this feels very harsh and judgy, but I just feel like I'm gonna set up a goal of making this something that goes beyond the traditional, um, typical art school oil painting. I want it to be something um, incredible, just because the simplicity of the architecture of the flower and its geometry. And also the fact that what comes first, perhaps, if is color. I'm not going to try to, that's why I'm going to keep my palette really reduced. I'm not going to try to prioritize color on this. I'm going to prioritize um, value, and I'm going to prioritize edge quality here. So I'm really excited because I want this to be a really beautiful, complex, and layered um, painting of a hibiscus. So one of the things that I'm gonna technically that I'm gonna start mentioning is the fact that the drawing is fundamental and very important. I'm gonna introduce a book that I was very excited because, as you know, I love going to thrift shops and finding old school forgotten manuals. So I bought these like a few years ago. It's really quirky and weird, and very limited editions were published of this. The book was published later, by the way. So this was the first edition. Helen Van Wyck, I don't know, that's her name, and she's hilarious. It's a self-portrait of her, and I'm going to explain why she's hilarious, not because I'm making fun of her at all, because actually this is a very rigorous manual that I was studying it this morning, preparing for this session, and she's incredible in the sense that she's very rigorous in how she approaches things and steps and exercises. I hate when some of the dudes that write manuals, they go from 0 to 1,000 miles an hour, and then you're supposed to fill in the blank, which is totally ridiculous. So I will go through this, but and I'm gonna just get an example of the first two exercises. But essentially, she talks a lot about composition and how important it is. And one of the things that she mentions in regards to flowers is the fact that try to avoid making the focal point. And by the way, I love that she talks um, about uh, things that we talk uh, in our sessions all the time. But one of the things that I'm learning, or that I just, and she approaches things like very traditional. Her paintings are absolutely gorgeous, so I really love that. It's the fact that she sees things in regards to focal points. So that's something that we talk about it all the time. And in regards to flowers, she says, do not do more than one focal point. Regardless if it's just a single flower that we have here or a bouquet of flowers with a vase. So this idea that she wants to unify or concentrate a flower painting or a painting of a still life with flowers down to one single focal point, it's really important. And I agree. And I'm gonna give you a sense of what she does with one exercise, because I thought it was really, really beautiful. We can do this with our painting, but I'll just show it this way. All right, so the first thing she does, oh, and she says that when the light is um, coming from a direction, it's a little bit more interesting. But she starts by doing these 4 marks. Okay, so I'm going to spend the next 5 minutes talking about how freaking important composition is going to be in your painting. And I've noticed yesterday was an amazing session and people did an incredible job. But she goes about the reason why she sets up those marks, and that is to kind of like give you a perimeter or a space that detaches the mass of the focal point from the edges of the painting. So first things first, not only she does that, but she does something that I'm going to add to my toolbox of criteria to follow with composition. And that's the reason why I did this composition. And if we only talk about composition today, it's going to be fine because I think that it's the most important foundational aspect of the entire process. But she says, leave a bit of space if you can. And I'll explain what happened yesterday with one painter who actually made a decision that worked even better than leaving a little bit of space. But try not to make the focal point too centered, and also make sure that the space between the edges of the mass and the edges of the format is not the same. So what she's saying is that the painting is going to be much more dynamic if we try not to fit it exactly with the same distance between the edges of that mass and the format. And that's something that I've never read it before. And that's why I love these old manuals that, no one reads or buys. It's because sometimes between the fluff and the unrealistic instructions, there are some gold nuggets of really good knowledge. And I think this one was one of them. So give it a try. Um, Look at your composition and ask yourself three things. Number one, is it too centered? And by the way, she puts an example of a painting that she did purposely to break that rule. Is it too centered? You want to slightly maybe move it to a little bit off center because that could be like an interesting composition. And number two, have you centered the silhouette in a way that gives you space around? And number three, and this is a new question that I'm gonna start incorporating specifically with still lifes, with a single object or multiple objects, is that are the spaces between the edges of that mass different? So because the photograph, I made a mistake taking this photograph. First, I did a photograph where I actually um, framed the flower, but I tried to do a filter with the iPhone that gives you a blurry background because I don't know, I just wanted to do some fancy stuff. And I accidentally flip the square that I had to a vertical. And when I went to print it out, I thought instead of like square, I'm just going to leave it like that and retrofit it. Well, little did I know that actually this may work better for the composition because of that distinction between the spaces between the mass and the edges. This applies, by the way, to any painting you do. Compositionally, it's a great thing to consider how things may not be necessarily as dynamic if they're perfectly centered. And also when we actually create some flow around the subject matter or the focal point rather, try to find variations in that distance. And these are like super specific and almost like mathematic things, but I just feel like they make sense in the context of composition. It's no one's gonna look at your painting and think, oh wow, this is like great because they were able to do like different spaces. But I just feel like that makes a difference on the viewer. So I'm gonna tell you the hilarious part that I love. And you know me by now. And one of the things that I say is that if you find a teacher that says no or don't, those are two big red flags for me. Because, I, in my experience, I've always learned better when I've been encouraged rather than stopped. And anything that is no or don't to me reminds me of learning by interrupting or by interruption, which I don't think it's a modern way of learning, or it's the best way of doing it. Well, guess what? Chapter 7, composition. And she talks about things that I'm going to mention: unity, variety, and balance. But she starts saying, here then are some compositional don'ts. So I just had to mention it because I started laughing. Because right at the beginning, she kind of like gives an introduction, but she says that the best way to approach this is by listing the don'ts in composition. And just for the sake of doing this in the confidence of friendship, I'm just gonna read to you the don'ts of Helen Van Wyck in regards to composing, because they're brilliant. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that this is the wrong approach. These are golden. Will I encourage or say this in any sort of like context of someone who joins our sessions for the first time? I will not. But I'm sharing this with you. Okay. And I just underline it. Don't place the focal point too near the edges of the canvas. Okay. Well, maybe I say this all the time. I'm playing here, I'm being judgy, and I share this all the time. But all right, so that's number 2. Number 1 is like, don't make equal divisions, not only in placing the entire bouquet, but also in spacing the flowers within the bouquet. And I feel like what she meant here was, she gives an example. So equal divisions, I exactly don't know what she means. The first thing that I thought was grids, or making like more of a regular separation. For example, equal divisions would be, look at the 4 flowers aligned at the bottom. So maybe that's what she meant. And this is the actual um, uh, better way to do it. So they're not aligned, nothing is aligned. And also the flowers are not all facing forward like here. So that was a bit of a curveball for me. I just had to bypass it, or not really. I was reading super fast. Number 3, don't use unrelated subject matter or unrelated brushwork in the same composition. What you'll get is variety, but your painting will lack unity. Your picture should have both variety while maintaining unity. So this is something that, it's her personal creative opinion, and to me, the way I read it is adding stuff to your painting. Okay, sometimes we do a painting and we feel like we need to add something to it. I don't know, maybe we're just adding a different object. Maybe we're adding someone that's passing in the background. It feels natural to wanting to add something to the composition when we feel like we're getting something out of it. Adding also means as well, not just a physical or object, adding a new color, adding a new detail, adding or changing the color of the background, or. All right, so I'm just kind of like speaking through the voice of Helen here, but I love this. Feels very Russian, regimented instruction, and that was totally xenophobic, but we were getting a crack out of it with Jen on Tuesday. Number 4, don't do anything that drains the interest from the focal point. You'll end up with 2 focal points or with none at all. You'll find that this mistake usually happens when the background and foreground are painted without any regard to the subject. I would never say this to anyone's face, but this is actually really good. She uses the word mistake. It's really head on and military, like. But I love the premise here. It's the fact that, the idea is to commit to a single subject matter and to sort of like quiet your artistic voice. Do you really need to add something to that painting? Does it really lack something? When did you find out that the painting was lacking something, lacking color, lacking a brighter background? it is in those moments that I suggest or recommend to pause and reflect. And I would say the same thing perhaps about speaking or writing. Do you really need to, say something sometimes, or is sort of like silence or less words much more meaningful? And she goes really kamikaze here with the don't, but I take this in a positive way in the sense of, for example, sometimes when you add something, she says as a mistake, but when you add something, the risk is that your focal point gets diluted. You'll have either more than one focal point or none at all. So we're going to talk a lot about what kind of like palette I'm going to do on the background, because this is like opposite in the spectrum in the color wheel. So you have like this green and I have the red. And I'm not sure exactly how I want to approach this because I it may just be this kind of like additional focal point that she talks about, in which what you end up doing, you're thinking you're bettering the painting and you are adding stuff that dilutes it. Um, so yeah, I thought that was really interesting. And I'm gonna make sure that on the email with the recording link, perhaps I should send you the list of these don'ts just as a kick and nothing to, because I feel like, this could be really dangerous. My gosh, in the sense that it could create a spell, an artistic spell. This is how and why people stop painting. When you have someone, an instructor, a facilitator, that puts more emphasis on the don'ts than the do's, it creates the opposite effect. It stalls creativity. In my opinion, the beef that I have about this is the fact that it doesn't really create a constructive approach to your own process. And it ends up making you feel like all you do is mistakes. So that's my approach to not saying these things. But at the same time, I realize that they have value. So take them, I wouldn't even say with a grain of salt, take them with a huge boulder of salt, okay? Because these are like, they may create the opposite effect and make you stop doing flowers altogether. I'm gonna do the 5 and 6 and then I'm gonna stop painting. I'm gonna start painting. Don't make objects in your composition just touch each other. I've seen this like many times in many manuals about what that means. I find this mistake constantly in students' paintings. It's a fault in composition that creates awkward shapes and obscures the beauty and form of the subject matter. To avoid this, place and paint objects in such a way that they either overlap each other or stand alone by themselves. And then she puts this figure right here. So this is the common premise of trying to avoid objects in your painting that share edges. Okay, so this is I don't see that much difference between these two, to be honest. So I'm gonna forget about this diagram because I'm just gonna tell you how this applies here. When we paint flower, and this is why this is so good. When we paint flowers, we tend to make the petals sort of like in a way that they touch. They have a shared edge. Yes, that's what's called a shared edge. uh I wouldn't call it problem. I mean, the amount of like negative words that she's using in each one of this, it's crazy to me. But and this was written 1981, so it wasn't like 1950s, which I don't know why I said that, but maybe there was a bit more progress in the 80s. But anyhow, so purposely, and I did advance my sketch a little bit further here because I wanted to bring it today to show you. It's barely noticeable, but the hibiscus flower, the way it's laid out when it opens, the petals are not sharing an edge. I would say this would be a blind spot on your painting, on our painting. And I would encourage you to put a lot more attention in how you are painting edges that are not shared with other petals. You have areas that may just kind of like share edges, like the cast shadow of this petal. And that edge right here, it's shared between the lit part and the shaded part. But the petals, even this one that is barely overlapping, this one totally overlaps. This one totally overlaps. There's even a sheer transparent um, uh, uh, idea of the petal behind it, kind of like showing from behind. So in a positive way, the way I would say this is try to avoid shared edges in any painting. When you arrange a still life that you want to paint, you get a commission, you want to paint a portrait, and try to avoid shared edges. Essentially, that's it. And then, well, there's only two more. I'm gonna go fast, but I'm sorry I'm taking this much time. We're okay. Number 6, don't make your elements the same size, such as the size of the vase being the same size as the flowers. Again, you'll have monotony. And I'm going to stop here because we do this all the time, variations, but maybe something deeper than what we talk about, variations in scale. So one of the things that I noticed as well on these images is that not all the petals are the same size. Um, this flower was higher than my eye level. Was it higher? No, it wasn't higher, but it was tilting lower. Yes, it was tilting lower. So I know this because the stemma, or whatever that's called, that I forgot, something like that. It's sort of like it's drooping. It goes down. So this pole, this mast, this is actually a really important part in all of the images of the hibiscus flowers. It's kind of like an axis line of the direction of the flower. So what this means is that the flower is tilting towards me. So this petal right here, because it comes forward a lot more, it's a little bit smaller than this one's right here. So I tried on my sketch to actually do that, to create this idea of this flower having this tilt toward me. Um, so what the way I translate this, that I could pass this information positively or in a positive light to all of us, is that try to create diversity in scale in your composition. Diversity in scale. So whatever you have that seems like it's similar, like say you do a landscape and you have a bunch of trees. Don't make them all the same. Or you have like um she mentions the fact that some students, she calls, they start the painting of a bouquet of flowers, uh, drawing the vase, and it drives her nuts. The way she kind of like uses all this mistake and stuff like that. I would love to be in a class with her and see how she goes about. But I know that it makes her really mad. Just because starting with a vase, we don't have a vase naturally. And I'm going to treat this in a very abstract way, by the way. So there's variation of detail. But starting with a vase, generally people, they do a really big one because that's the grounding element, right? I would do that. And then they kind of like start doing flower by flower. And then they ran out of a space and the composition is off, and then the scale may look, monotonous. This idea of monotony, I concur with her. We try to avoid monotony. And the reason behind it, it's not because we're bad or we do something wrong. It's because as a viewer of a painting, those elements will affect our mind. If anything in our painting is the same scale, the mind of the viewer will unify the whole thing into one. So it's not because there's a mistake, it's because we're trying to break the natural tendency of our mind to unify things that are the same. Um, and the final one that I think it's really good. Well, this is the kind of like we mentioned this before. Don't paint your flowers all facing in the same direction. Uh, that's it, no explanation. Um, so yeah, we know that if you have a bunch, but in this case, we only have one. Look at the direction of that flower. It's not facing, I guarantee you, it's not facing forward. So have that in mind of what happens to us when we paint faces. We end up painting faces um, all facing forward, because it's so hard for us to understand that maybe on a three-quarter perspective, uh, the left eye or the right eye may just land in the right middle of the head. And our mind is like, this doesn't compute. It's crazy. I'm not gonna draw an eye in the middle of a head. But that's where the position of the eye is, because the face is tilted. And then when the mind tyrannically tells us to put the eye closer to the ear and the other eye closer to the other ear. And then we end up making a facing forward portrait. It's not our fault. It's the tyranny of the mind that, through observation, we start kind of like taming. Luckily, I'm not gonna be like all mean and judgy. She lists 3 do's. So I was like, oh, great. So she has like 3 brief do's, but they're not entirely positive, but you tell me. Number 1, make sure is essentially a less loaded no. So she lost me with the do's, and then starting with the make sure. Make sure your picture has only one focal point. Okay. An object can be placed in the middle of your canvas, but the focal point can't. Okay, so that's a do. An object can be placed in the middle of your canvas, but the focal point can't. She talks about how it's important to place the focal point. I'm going to explain this right here. Um, she says that this is too far to one side, but this is a really good placement of the focal point. And then these lines right here are alternative focal point placements that she suggests. So axis line dividing the space in the middle, and then horizontally as well. So this is too far away from, and too close to the edge, she mentions. But these 4 options right here, slightly to one side, above or below, could be great. This is really good for me. Meaning this is something I never would have put my thought into it, or I've never seen anyone actually visualizing this slight change and I'm going to start doing this as well. I think this is really helpful and really valuable, and so really great diagram. um, so yeah, and the third one is a focal point happens where there is interesting strong contrast. Okay, so that's also very good, and we talk about it when we revise our painting. Areas of strong contrast are good areas to put or to develop the interest of your painting. A focal point happens when there is interesting, strong contrast. So what does it mean, and how can we make it useful to us? It means that when we revise our work, when we revisit areas, when we are at a point where we find that we want to work on something and we don't know where or what, go to those high contrast areas and see if they're developed enough, or if you're happy with them, or if you want to create more variations, or if they feel more regular. And the reason, my opinion, she doesn't expand on it, but my opinion is that high contrast areas will always create more pool of attention, just because our eye will have a tendency to stop there. So that's the reason why they could be really great areas where we could create more interest. That is also the core reason why we always follow darker to lighter, by the way. Darker allows us to anchor our graphic areas, and we can always expand from there. So high contrast areas are really important. And I'm going to stop right here because I don't want to overwhelm you or sort of like bore you with this stuff, but I could really get sucked in with reading what others really experienced professional painters talk about or have done. And all right, so this should conclude your sketching if you have been sketching, and then your I'm glad we did this just because composition. It's the most important part. To me, it's the most important part. And the book has other chapters and stuff, and I can just mention other things, but um, that was really good and really uh, informative and hilarious at the same time uh, when it comes to the don'ts and the amount of like things about it communicates, and maybe it's just a PTSD that I need to get over it. It communicates a sense of the facilitator not trusting you. So it's a paternalistic approach to teaching that I've always tried not to replicate. It's this idea that it's almost like an imbalance in on power or in power or off power. It's like, I know better, you don't. Don't. Make sure, make sure, make sure. No, just because um, I don't trust you. That's always the feeling that I got, The teachers that I had more difficulty with from not regardless if it was art or any other subject. It's this idea that I have the power and I'm not trusting you. And it always came through with words. Um, yeah, it's amazing because, sometimes a word can really create a spell. So that's what it did to me. So but that's the approach. That's the pedagogic approach to many of these manuals. And some people, I feel like some of us, that's the only way we respond to learning about art. I'm criticizing it, but at the same time, I recognize that for some of us, this is the only way that we actually get something. And I would advise if that's happen, and I've seen this in my sessions, if that's what happens, I would have advised to soften up a little bit in the sense that you don't need someone to tell you what not to do for you to learn something. Um, it's always been the case. That's how we grew up, and we assume that that's normal. But I have experienced, and hopefully we have all experienced amazing teachers that were able to inspire us in a positive way without with full trust, with full trust, in a way that allowed us to learn things for ourselves. And that's when things really stick. Um, if you feel like you need someone to tell you what not to do, you will always depend on someone to tell you what not to do. And yeah, no, we don't want to be codependent. All right. I'm totally going on a tangent of pedagogy and philosophical stuff. I did a postgraduate in pedagogy when I finished my university, precisely because I needed to get all the things out of my system. And it was the best thing that I did to unlearn not only what I learned during art school, but also to get a perspective and a view of how I was educated. Um, yeah, I just as an anecdote, I would say that not very often. I think not very often, but in our long history, I mean, 8 years as roofless painters, but before that, many years with adult classes or classes for adults that I had a few people that I saw the resistance. I noticed that there was a lack of trust that manifested in the sense that unless I criticized their work, they didn't take me seriously. And I some people put me to the edge. They pushed me to the edge to kind of like say, you want it? I'm gonna give it to you. Because any of us could easily go about and say, no, 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 no. Um, I don't recall any moment that I lost it because I was the only thing that I did, I just refused to engage in that dynamic and I pulled back. And that person, usually they never come back. But it's been an interesting dynamic. And I feel a sort of empathy for that because I know that that's a wiring of the brain that I cannot undo. I just can't undo. I feel like our wires get harder the older we get. And I feel like, there's this sense that we're drifting away from younger generations, and then we're getting harder in our thinking just because there's so much contrast between us and new ways of thinking that we get even harder. So our mindset is immovable, and I try not to be that person. All right, so I'm gonna go for it, and I'm gonna ruin this. Look at see, it's just I'm getting the vibes. Helen, is just screaming at me. But I'm gonna start with my four tones. As I usually mention, I paint with four colors: white, Prussian blue, burnt sienna, and yellow ochre. And I don't have a big brush here. I'm gonna use this bigger brush. I had one, but that's okay. So solvent, um, and I'm gonna just use the burnt sienna. And I'm gonna use the solvent only and go to the darker areas. This is dark right here. So color masses, I'm not drawing right now. I'm just, last month, it's in the recorded um, session, we were happy to introduce for the first time this combination of um, solvent and oil, that it's brilliant. It's a brand from Canada that makes the first, not the first, but a non-toxic, uh, non-petroleum based solvent um, that doesn't have fumes or smell. And we're mixing it 3 parts solvent, 1 part um, sunflower oil, because we're slowly trying to move away from using solvent and be a bit more professional. Solvent could be harsh and too stripping the underpainting too much. And it's been amazing. It's been absolutely amazing, this combination of 3 part solvent. It just doesn't feel oily at all. It just feels very liquidy, but it doesn't drip as much, has a beautiful consistency. I couldn't be happier to have made the switch. And for us as a company, it's just costing us the same. It's not more expensive. Um, I mean, I say as a company, but also for all of us, there are very expensive materials out there, but do we really need, is it going to make really a better painting? Okay, so I'm going to actually use a lighter, and then I'm going to do so as you notice, what I'm doing is my wash, also called imprimatura, just very thin layer. I'm going darker to lighter. If it's too much, you can use the rack, and you can empty or lower the tone a little bit. That's what I'm going to do, because I don't want to put, maybe I put less paint and more. But the idea is, oh, and by the way, when I drew the flowers, I went over and over and over the shape of the petals, because we can draw the flower just by the contour. That's why I didn't go to contour as much with this session or this exercise. But then I realized that my petals were wonky. They were like weird shaped, and I'm like, uh, they were just kind of like weird. They just felt like mushy mango slices. They didn't have that bounciness. And then I had to kind of like pay attention to each petal in regards to the rest. So if you're still sketching, and that, hopefully that gives you an idea why I consider this as difficult as a portrait. And I'm going to go back to the beginning. I'm raising the bar really high on this. I don't want it to be just a typical flower painting. There's nothing wrong with that. But I'm setting up my expectation a bit higher. So it's not like it's more difficult than a portrait, but I'm going to make it as challenging as a portrait. Perhaps I should reframe it this way. Make it feel as challenging as if you were making a portrait. So yeah, I think that's probably the better approach to this. So this is very foundational and preliminary. I'm not worried. I'm just essentially wetting the paper in a certain order. It doesn't have to have a specific color. I don't know how I feel about red later, incorporating it. I really value what she said about either adding objects or adding stuff. I don't want to do it. I think this idea of creating more focal points is totally valid. It's totally valid. And yeah. Yeah, and then for the background, I'm gonna use, okay, I'm still on the foreground, so I'm gonna mix a bit of those two to make it much darker. And I'll just bring a bit of yellow ochre. I'm not gonna use white because I have the white just to blaze the thing. And then on the background, I know that I'm going to be done with this when everything's pretty much covered. You know how I approach this stage. I always feel like a painting that has an empty spot feels much more unfinished than anything else. I always bring up the same example, forgive me, but I have a painting hanging at Gibson, a beautiful showroom slash gallery in Beverly in the Fairfax district. And it's a painting that I did at the rooftop of the Ace Hotel in downtown of the full moon. And I had a big group. We were painting socks, feet with socks. I have a friend who joined that night. All right, that tells you already something. He never joined again, although he had a great experience, but he always brings up this. He's like, you made me paint socks on the first painting. And I laugh, obviously, but obviously he expected some other subject. And I love that he's a bit entertained by that idea, but also a bit bothered. His first painting was a painting of feet with socks. And I love that. But on that painting, because I had new people, I couldn't focus on my own work. And I only did enough to make an example of what's the sketch, what's in Prematura, and what's first notes. And that was a reject. That wasn't a painting. I saved it because I'm a hoarder of paintings, I guess. It's hanging right now at Gibson, and it's had some interest. Some people, I got a call last week that someone is interested in the full moon painting. It's scratched. I had to pull the hairs from it. It has Um, I think I had a notebook, my sketchbook on it, when I packed it. So it has like dots marked. It's a mess, but this will always be my example of why it's important to fill everything and make the painting look like it's something. Um, yeah. So I'm gonna mix a bit of Prussian blue and yellow ochre. And this will be, um, I should get like a bigger brush, but I'm not going to. So, but this will be, or maybe I should. Yes. Two. Okay, here we go. I have an issue. I don't like I had this conversation with an artist and an art store owner, in fact. I was getting materials um for us, and I have a hard time with the typical oil painting brushes. The bristles are so hard, and it's just too hard, you know. And he's like, nope, you have to have this. These are the oil brushes. I I I didn't buy them. So, but yeah, it's just the fact that it doesn't align with my energy. Um, I just feel like it's a very aggressive approach to painting. I prefer the soft, but to each their own. I'm just giving you my approach. And I feel to me the hard bristles, it's just, but I'm gonna use them right here. I didn't buy this. I brought a Julian French easel, um, secondhand, and inside of which I donated the other day because I had like three or four, and it was broken. And every time I put it up, I had to do some weird stuff. Um, Inside the little drawer, it had a bunch of uh, brushes, and they were all the typical oil brush. I didn't throw them away, obviously, but um, I never used them. But now that I'm here and I have the soft brushes, the big soft brushes in the car, and knowing that this is really just a short step, um, I'm using this really hardcore brush. Try it. It's just this is a matter of what materials align with your soul. I'm sorry to be like so dramatic, but it is. It's not just to use the best materials or the materials that someone tells you you have to use. Um, it's what aligns with your energy. And there, luckily, there are many options of support and brushes and paint and it's a way of discovering yourself and learning about yourself, really. I mean, this is kind of like a bit out there, but it is. It just you can be hard in your softness, meaning you can have conviction and truly know who you are and stand in your own softness. There's something honorable about that. So to me, um, this was an example of that. This is too hard. It requires too much paint that I hate to waste in an early stage. Um, and also a lot more pressure and aggression against the surface. I'm not like that. So softer, it's better. And luckily, I came. Um, I met many artists that have that same opinion. Professional artists, both men and women, that uh, they prefer soft round. By the way, so I'm like, yeah, okay, good. I'm not alone. Um, all right, so I have this, and time-wise, perfect. So I have half an hour, and I'm just gonna do the beginnings of my first pass, or the first color notes. So I'm gonna go back to the area. I'm gonna start doing darker to lighter, and maybe I'll switch the brush. And I usually mention concentrate on edge work here. Pretend that you're resketching again, and do the darker areas and anything that has a lot of darker notes. Just because, and I'm going to use the oil. And the oil we haven't changed. It's the same combination of half stand oil, half linseed oil. And then what I'm gonna do is uh, I'm gonna start being a bit more precise with the edge work and slower. And I am gonna start. This is what takes, it's gonna take me the whole time. And essentially what I wanna do is concentrate on the shadows for now, and also on the edges of things. So one of the things that I would say is practice some exaggeration. So if you see ruffles or a torn edge, our mind, our tyrannical mind, will want to flatten it out, iron everything. It's just so amazing the disconnect. It's not like it's disconnected because the mind, it's doing its job. Our mind is doing its job, which is to simplify and yeah, simplify the incredibly huge amount of visual information that we receive. It's so overwhelming. If the mind had to compute and shelve and organize everything we receive through our senses, it would just explode. So its main job is to simplify, categorize, unify, um, block out, yeah. So set everything into simple lists. Our job as artists is to practice observation. So we're actually bringing up more information that the mind is categorizing. So you'll see that some edges will be either flat, we saw it yesterday, or too regular, or so exaggerated. For example, this edge is too flat right here. So I'm not going to do anything about it now, but I know that I'm going to go there and do that. So I'm gonna to make it more ruffled, exaggerate it. I'm just going to create the darker areas, and I'm just gonna go to bringing back, especially the edge. So in my case, the light was coming naturally. These are flowers that are not facing the light direction. That's very important. They actually face the way they grow. Okay, so keep that in mind because in my case, it's been really hot and sunny. Yesterday was super hot. Um, but look at this flower facing. I mean, obviously I put the camera in front of it, but there's one behind it that I'm not gonna do, and it's facing another direction. What it means is that each flower will have a different play of light reflection on it. So have that in mind. The way to paint light is to paint the highlights and the cast shadows on things. So that's what I'm gonna do, because that's gonna be really important. I take that almost as it's not an existing shape, it's just a cast shadow. And also it allows me to do that avoiding of the shared edges. That avoiding of the shared edges, it's pretty much a very old school, traditional, orthodox approach to painting. In acrylic, in watercolor, in oil, avoiding shared edges. It's something that you will hear or read about. So yeah, there's that shadow, and feel free to change your edge right here. Painting is drawing. That's one of the things that I also disputed. She says that painting and drawing are totally different, and I disagree on that approach. Painting is drawing, and what I'm doing right now is drawing, but I'm using, yeah. Am I gonna use white? You know what? I'm gonna start using white. I'm gonna start using white. And I'm just gonna do white and burnt sienna for now. We'll see. I haven't made any decisions about red, okay? I don't know. I haven't decided anything. I want to see what I can get with this. Oh, another thing, if you're painting, the crepe. I think it's called crepe or crepe paper. It's a paper that it's really wrinkly, used for crafts. So the surface of the petals may feel like that because it's really thin. So if you're doing that, the crevices or uh, uh, these sort of like wrinkles on the petals, they follow a radiating um, order. So I noticed that yesterday some of us were painting either one direction or completely not following a direction. But just know that when you paint those um, wrinkled areas, um, it radiates from the center, and as you go out, the lines sort of like diverge. So have that in mind when you paint, if you want to paint those areas, because this is why it's going to get really interesting. Because we're not going to paint only red and green. um, I'm not going to make this in my painting an exercise in color. I'm going to make it an exercise in values. So I'm going to try to get as much texture as I can with my limited palette, and then we'll see what happens. Um, what am I doing? I'm just going to the lighter areas, and I think I need to. I don't know what I'm gonna do because I love the pastel pinks, and there is orange here. It's not red. There's this burgundy color. It's just an array um of hues and tones with the same color. So I don't know. I don't know if I'll be able to just stick with just this like palette right here. Ah, but we'll see. Okay, so we could with time and be patient. Things take time. Forget about the do's and don'ts, please. I just keep going. See, that's what happens when something like this happens. Um, we respond a lot more with the don'ts than we do with the do's. Isn't it interesting? Yeah. I'm just gonna try to put this a bit closer. Uh, yeah, to see if I can be a bit more specific. Uh, but yeah, so right now, a bit of oil, not too much, and I'm doing the dark areas. Possibly, what I'll do as well is try to work with the background a bit more rather than concentrating on the petals. Yeah, this is the uh, meditating part of the exercise. Yeah, you can if you need to put me in mute. But this is doing the darks. I'm repeating what I did with the wash. Don't panic. Don't get triggered about what this looks like. If it's a mess or if it has a certain look that's really bothering you, I would say breathe and just chug along. Just move, just move forward. This is only the beginning. It's only the beginning. A bit of oil if you need it. And by the way, when I read the don'ts, look at me. I can't let it go, right? I wasn't thinking particularly of on anyone specifically, because I think this is another thing about the don'ts. It's like they're so powerful and so strong that even though they're directed at someone else, we internalize them. They're not even directed at us, and we're like, uh-oh. Um, so my reading of the Don'ts wasn't thinking of anyone in particular, so please don't. Oh my gosh, you can't escape. Um, yeah. Oh, I love these ruffles right here. One of the things that I edit the newsletter, the post a lot because they're just go on and it's ridiculous sometimes. But one of the things that I left outside of the newsletter is that I went to the Huntington to see, which I'm going to share. Actually, I'm going to share the last 10 minutes. I'm going to give you some shows and some things that I watched or that I saw. Um, so, oh yeah, you know what? I'm just gonna say this because um, I didn't expect this to happen. I went to the Huntington. It took me an hour, totally worth it. It's worth to fly in that place from outside of the state. Gorgeous, beautiful, amazing, so well curated, so much order. I feel like there's something about it that it exerts some tyranny as well. I went to the pavilion. The show was it moved me. I was so oh my gosh, it was so beautiful. And then I just left and I didn't want to just go see the garden. I had things to do and I said I wanted to see the other show, but I did go. I did a bit of a walk, not the whole thing, but I went to obviously the Rose Garden. Um, and this is tangential, but the last time my mom was in LA, I took her to the Huntington Gardens and to see the Rose Garden. So that was a really beautiful moment that I didn't expect at all when I was driving there or when I was planning or anything. I didn't expect it at all. And um, I just like stood in front of like it was a specific spot that, and I just stood there and it reminded me when she was here the last time. But anyhow, so just going back to uh, from the tangent, I was thinking because I've been gestating this topic, this theme for a while, about August. I didn't see any hibiscus flowers at the Huntington Gardens. I did not see hibiscus flowers at the Huntington Gardens, and I'm appalled. I'm gonna write a letter to the director, whoever they are. But I was like, how is this possible? It was end of July. And was it? No, it was the last day of July, actually. It was the last day of July. Um, and I was in shock. There's not a pocket or a section, and there were many, and it blooms now. It blooms now, end of July until early fall, by the way. And there were daisies. They were kind of like, all right, they were co the most common flowers you could associate, with flowers. Uh, all kinds of like really beautiful flowers, but also really common flowers. And no um, hibiscus. No hibiscus at the Huntington Gardens. My gosh. Unforgivable. Unforgivable. They probably had a bunch somewhere, but I didn't go. No, I did walk a bit, I did, the typical thing, all through the Rose Garden and the Japanese area, which was gorgeous, and back. And I didn't go to uh the cacti or the stuff, I didn't do that. But no, yeah, no, I was like really bummed. So that's why that was my definitive decision to do it because um it certainly needed some sort of a tribute. All right, so I'll just mention really quickly what I'm going to do with the background, and then I'll show you a couple of catalogs. Oh, sorry, this is like So I'm going to areas that are really dark on the background. And this is another example of why painting is drawing. Um, I am drawing the flowers from the outside. I'm drawing the flowers from the outside. And I'm using yellow ochre and Prussian blue for that. Remember, the high contrast areas are areas of interest. It doesn't mean like we have to work more on them, but just consider that areas of interest should be a criteria when you assess your progress. Go to the high contrast areas and see how they're doing. Um, I am just this is gonna be okay. I'm gonna tell this to myself. It's just I barely worked on it, but I know that this will be okay. Ideas for blending. You can use the rag as well as the empty or a clean brush. So know that there's gonna be a lot of blending in this subject. So um, yeah, so I think also edge quality, and one of the things that she brings up as well. Not everything needs to be sharp. Just consider that as well. And um, yeah, we one of the reasons why I'm also excited about the private Geneva room that is going to go international at some point is the fact that we can use it to upload progress image because some of us won't hear each other or see each other until next month. So I don't want it to be that much time between now and then the second week of September. Next session would be in September. So uh, I want the private room in Geneva to be a space where we could actually ask questions, share progress, um, and be a bit more interactive outside of Zoom and everything, because that's too complicated. So consider that. But yeah, so one of the things that I was excited about is I wanted to get the catalog of the exhibition. So this is Don Bacardi, and the exhibition closed on the 4th of, so this past Monday. But I was really blown away by the sheer amount of work that he created. He is known for being the partner of Christopher Isherwood. There's a whole part of which also reminded me of losing my mom in a way. There was a whole part about a small section about him painting portraits of Christopher Isherwood, his partner, and only him for the less than a year when Christopher was sick. He died of cancer and he essentially stayed at home. And there were also drawings and combinations of drawings and watercolors and so it's just amazing. I was moved not only by the execution, but how courageous it is to do things in water like this, for example. The shirt is in ink, right? Diluted ink. Is it ink? Yeah, ink on paper. But then he used pencil. This is Christopher Knight, the LA Times art critic, and I have issues with his writing and what he does. Of course, he did an exceptional writing of this show because he's in it. And this was done in 1983, so he was part of the circle. But I'm going to show you, and I'm going to mention, and I'm going to close with this. The series of portraits that he did um, of Isherwood when he was ill and dying. Because I thought they were really strong and powerful. And they were done with acrylic. So This is on paper. Everything was on paper, and the majority of the work that he does is on paper. And by the way, I was happy to know that the majority of the format is 18 by 24, which is the format that we used when we painted with acrylic. This is acrylic, so acrylic on paper. So he spent an entire year, by the time Don Bacardi was famous, but he spent an entire year just painting just to capture him, just to retain, he know that he was losing him, and then just to keep documenting the moments that he was alive. And one of the most moving parts of the show is when in his own, I think it's in his own voice, I forgot, because there's an audio. He painted Christopher Isherwood died in the house in Santa Monica that's still there. And uh, after he passed away, Don Bacardi painted his portrait. So that's what I thought it was really moving. That final act, instead of sort of like beloved passing and everything goes so fast, right? That's one of the things that I experience, how fast everything goes. Everything goes fast. You don't have time to anything. But the fact that he took time to do the final portrait of him after he actually passed away, it was only him and Isherwood in the room, and he made a final portrait. It wasn't shown in this exhibition, only the sketches that he did that year. Anyhow, so apparently it's been either this has been a very successful show, or they did a very limited run of catalogs, because I went to the store and there were none. Everything was sold out. So I found this on eBay. Someone sold it on eBay and I got it. And I'm so glad I did, because uh, I have a memory. It just reminds me a bit of David Hockney. They were friends. Look at this gorgeous dominance of pink. There were nudes. Oh, and also what I found very interesting, very interesting. Look at this amazing drawing and painting. Don Bacardi only used drawings before Isherwood passed away. After Isherwood passed away, he started painting with color. And I thought that was also something moving and beautiful. The fact that he started a new life and his painting started a new life after his partner passed away, and then he introduced color in his palette, which you would think like it would be the other way around, right? It's like he found a new life or something. I don't know. I thought it was really beautiful. All right, so I am going to stop the recording. Thanks for being here. I didn't even check. Yeah, thanks for being here. You're welcome to stay and just mention anything. Again, some people love the fact that people share. So this time I'm going to encourage you, whatever stage you have, if you have painted, to kind of like share for the sake of community. And other than that, know that I appreciated your feedback a lot. I want to make these sessions better. I'm gonna study the feedback more, and then see what else I can introduce. If you haven't done it yet, please, it's on the Geneva group, that the room that we did just for subscribers. And so go ahead and just kind of like fill it out. It would be really helpful. And what else? Yeah, so I'm just gonna stop the recording. Thanks for today. This was great.